What are you not supposed to talk about around a dinner table? Politics, money, religion, and I would suggest sex. We're going to talk about most of those things this morning because our Bible reading indicates that we should. Before we talk about Genesis 39, well read to us, thank you so much, a long one. And we're in a series on Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. And if you're anything like me, if you listened to the soundtrack of the musical before, you're singing it in your head. But we want to rewind back to Genesis 1 today and look at three themes, because often these biblical authors will have ingrained in their text themes that they bring out as motifs time and time again. And I would suggest to you there are three things in Genesis 1 that the author brings out again in Genesis 39. And they are food, dominion, or power, and sexuality. Okay, it's food, dominion, and sexuality. Well, in Genesis 1, we have food, don't we? Lavishly provided for Adam and Eve in the garden. They can eat anything from the trees except that one, because that is how they show their obedience and submission to God. And so there is a sense of they are able to enjoy the gifts from heaven and indeed very easily stroll and work the land as free people enjoying the abundance of God. And also, some commentators would suggest that there is a conflict-free zone, that somehow Eden is vegetarian. Even the animals. Can you imagine a lion being vegetarian, gnawing down on a carrot? But we get the sense that there isn't this fear or conflict in this space, but indeed, for everybody's well provided for, everybody is enjoying the abundance of the earth. Dominion. Adam, indeed, is asked to say name the animals as God brings them to him while they look for a partner for him. He's asked, in that sense, to take on this co-labouring aspect of his calling, this stewardship with God. He was to reign in creation. That was Adam's calling. In old, ancient kind of origin stories, the only people made in the image of God were the kings, all those leaders. But instead, in the biblical narrative, what we have is everybody, humanity. This is what Adam means in the Hebrew, is made in the image of God. Everyone is made to be rulers, stewards of the earth with God. And so we have Adam really in his calling, really living out what he's made to do with God at his side. And of course, sexuality comes out because Eve is made out of Adam's side, an equal partner of him. And Adam says, bone of bone, flesh of flesh. Finally, there is someone here. And there's this sort of archetypal wedding ceremony where they're joined together and taught to be fruitful and multiply. There is a mutuality to their relationship, and the relationship is literally life-giving. In Genesis 39, we see these three things brought out, but I would say they've been perverted. Food, we see and we hear about Potiphar, someone of great power, now giving away his responsibilities to someone he has bought. Giving them to Joseph, who, yes, stewards them well because the Lord is with him. But all Potiphar is concerned about is his food intake. He isn't enjoying the fruits of his labour anymore, but rather the fruits of other people's labour. We have this power piece come out because Potiphar is an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. This is someone of high standing. We don't quite know if it's something he's still in or something that he was, but certainly respected. And so you get the sense that maybe he has worked hard to get to his position at some point, and indeed now has great authority and power, but has it gone to his head a little bit? He certainly still has the possibility of access to the king's estate, because that's later on where he puts Joseph. in the king's prison. There is a sense of comparison though in this passage, because Potiphar is a great leader in Egypt, but he never once says that he does it with the Lord. Whereas Joseph, he is starting to lead once again, but he's doing it because of the Lord's blessing. And indeed we see this sort of journey for Joseph. He once had authority in his father's household. He once was the boy with the ornate technicolor coat, long sleeves, which meant he didn't do any hard labour. He supervised his brothers, but only gave bad reports of them. He abused his position to crush other people in his father's household. Or at the very least was unwise with his authority. And now we start to see in this position of humility, forced humility, he begins to learn to lead with God's blessing, in his true calling, as if Adam did also. That line of finally stepping into the true stewardship that God intended for his people. And of course, sexuality as well. You see that mutuality in Genesis 1, that life-giving nature. That isn't what we see here in Genesis 39. We see someone, the wife particularly, really demanding something of Joseph that he doesn't want to give. The Hebrew, according to some preachers and scholars, is very strong. This isn't a please will you. This is come do it now. An absolute command. My authority means you must listen to my voice. Now, to be fair to the wife, because we don't want to paint her with too much of a harsh brush, some scholars think that her husband was either a eunuch, so wasn't able to have intimate relations with his wife, or is someone that maybe is so busy with his authority that he would ignore her. And so you begin to see that perhaps their marriage was dysfunctional and where this may have come from, and some of that wasn't going to be her fault, considering female positions in history. However, the text does show that she then manipulates a situation that she's tried to create herself, pervert sexuality, force Joseph into a non-consensual, outside of wedlock relationship, and then turns it on him when she doesn't get what she wants. So there's a sense that her power has also led her to expect things, and when she doesn't get it, she throws the toys out with the bathwater. Do we see how these things that God made to be beautiful, to be well stewarded, to be something that is both shared and life-giving, have now been twisted because of sin, because people don't look to the Lord for help and his wisdom. They've now been twisted, and they are things which actually cause destruction, either to people's bodies or to their spiritual life, turning them further away from who they're supposed to be in God. Now, in the New Testament, it's really interesting to me at least, I don't know if it's interesting to you, but Jesus actually talks about food. He says to the crowd, this is to a bunch of Pharisees who are shocked that his disciples are eating certain things, either on a Sabbath or from the temple, and he says to the crowd, listen to me everyone and understand this, nothing outside a person, meaning food, can defile them by going into them. Rather, it's what comes out of the person that defiles them. So it makes me look back at Genesis 39 and see Potiphar's sort of concern with his food and his consumption and think, what was in his heart there? Was it just simple, I'm enjoying my retirement, I can trust somebody else? Or was there a sense of pride or arrogance or living in his own glory, of not sharing his wealth? And indeed, St. Paul talks about sexuality, that all of the sins a person committed outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. And he goes on to say that you are not your own. You were bought with a price, and therefore honour God with your bodies. There is a sense where Paul is sort of trying to get us to see that these things go deeper than just a momentary interaction. We are people in a holistic sense. We are not just great thinkers, we are not just great feelers. Sin doesn't not use our bodies. God wants all of us to be in line with his will. And you can see, can't you, that Potiphar's wife starts with thinking, oh, he's handsome. And then it moves into action. And that's often the way things happen to us too, isn't it? We have a thought and then we follow through, whether good or bad. It involves all of us, whether something of God or whether sin. And indeed, Paul says, flee from it. Protect yourself, flee, run away, just like Joseph did. Because God is more important. It's more important to be holy like he is holy than to give into it, even if you think that might be the more peaceable route. So where do we go from here? Well, my final points for you. I think we have to be aware of the dangers of mindless consumption. It leads us away, I think, from worshipping and thanking God for the gifts that he has given us. It may be as simple as continuing to be in the habit of praying before a meal. And it makes us mindful of actually we are recipients of something that we do not deserve. But God has provided this through various means. Granted, we've not toiled the earth like our ancestors used to, but somebody has. You may even go further and think, actually, where am I buying my food from? Is it ethical? Is it seasonal? And I'm not giving you the answers here, I'm just saying that we should do mindful consumption. Be aware of our choices. So we're aware of stewarding the earth well. But also, an equal danger is overconsumption. Because just like Potiphar, it leads to sort of that apathy and laziness that he only thinks about his own consumption of food and doesn't think about anything else in his household which still belongs to him. It leads us not participating in the work that God has for each one of us. We find ourselves over-consuming. Either it could be food, it could be any other escape that we find ourselves in. For me, the danger is Netflix. Binge watching a TV show. Overconsumption can dull my senses to the actual work that God has called me to do. There's also a danger of abuse of power in this passage in Genesis 39. We need to be voices and people who are aware that that abuse of power still happens, either in politics, but also in much more subtle ways, in things that are hidden in our communities. I was in a school this week and a police officer was in to talk to the children about county lines, drug trafficking, because apparently it's rife in our area. See, it's easy for us to think about, well, our village is okay. But actually, we do need to be a voice because there will always be people being harmed around us. And if we see things, if we have the opportunity to join in with standing up against something we know might be hurting others, we should. Indeed, we also perhaps need to stand up against those that would use sexuality to, say, steal the innocence of a child. I've been in churches where this has happened. And I mean small rural churches too. We stand up against those who treat bodies as commodities, and those who abuse that which was shared and meant for private with those in public to ruin others, just like we see in Genesis 39. Abuse of power is still very much in our world, and it's our job, each and every one of us, when we can, to stand up against it, treat seriously our role in being a positive voice to help others' body, mind and spirit. And finally, I think when we think about leadership, you often find that many people go, well, I'm not a leader, so that doesn't apply to me. But I would suggest to us that each and every one of us have a realm of influence, whether we're a leader or not. We have people who listen to us and people that don't. We have people that we can influence, either family, friends, groups that we're a part of. And each one of us is called to step into that original calling of co-labouring with God. And not being leaders that strike out on their own, thinking they've got the strength to do it by themselves, or to fall into arrogance and sin. We see that journey in Joseph, don't we? But rather, let's be leaders, people who are full of humility. Let's choose it rather than it being forced upon us. Let's flee from that which is wrong and trust in the Lord for his guidance in times of plenty and blessing, but also in times of scarcity and in waiting. So today I've tried to give you a little picture of these themes and motifs that come out in Genesis and how the author again brings them out in the story of Joseph. And these themes aren't far away from our lives. We all lead. We all have influence. We all are people. Holistic, body, mind and soul. And God is interested in all of it, bringing all of it under his power and blessing. So will we willingly give it to him and be guided by him this week? Amen.